Morning, everybody. This is Zach at it again. I am your host, Zach Cooley. I'm very happy to be here with a dear friend of mine and one of the most interesting people I've ever met in my life, Ms. Carla Rojas. Thank you, Carla, for being with me today. I'm very excited to talk to you because you have told me some very interesting stories over the couple of years I guess I've known you now. You and I met at the library, and yes, indeed. And as my dear friend Anita Libby said on the podcast a couple weeks ago, you are the front desk guru of the Wythe County Public Library, and as far as I'm concerned, you are the light of that place.
Well, that's right.
So you certainly brighten it up for me, and you brightened my life up since day one that we've met. There's a couple things I want to mention that we will get out of the way first. A happy memory that I have of you and I is the only time I ever won trivia night. I took first place and you took second.
We sure did, and I missed trivia night. We had a blast.
Yep, it was the best. And at one of those meetings, you and my little Bella have a very special bond because you caught her a couple of years ago when we were at an event and she was sneaking over and getting the cookies. And you said, that was me when I was little, so you call her little Carla now.
I certainly do, and I was one of those kids that would, and I just observed her, as I said, she's looking and she's stuffing at the same time.
Yep.
I said, that's me. That's Carla, little Carla.
Yep. And you have told me because I love the classic era of Hollywood, the classic era of TV and music, and you've told me about living in New York.
Yep.
Some of the very interesting people that you've met. Now, are you from New York?
Originally, I was born in Brooklyn, New York.
Mm.
Born and bred in Brooklyn.
And so, but you live in Whiteville now, right?
Yes.
And
I retired in 2012 and moved to Virginia.
And how did a girl who is so New York like you are and wind up in Whiteville?
Well, just by coincidence, I guess. I mean, I have been to Whiteville, to the big super Walmart, and just moved from Marion, where I was originally, to Whiteville, and just have a bigger place.
Okay.
And we have better restaurants because there's Applebee's and, a bigger variety.
Right. So did you have family that brought you to
I did.
Whiteville?
I did. In Marion. And that was my biological father, and he passed away.
Oh. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Can you tell me how you first got entangled with the kind of the celebrity stardom in New York? I think.
Well, you can't live in New York. You can't throw a stone without seeing celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
They're everywhere. And at one time, I worked for an advertising agency. And when the movie Saturday Night Fever came out, one of the guys who was in the movie with John Travolta, he came in to do a commercial. So we got to meet him. And like Roy Scheider came in, and this was around the time with Jaws.
Mm-hmm.
So he came in to do a commercial for us, and so we'd see a lot of celebrities. And then I worked on Madison Avenue, and it was 49th Street, and we would see so many celebrities going into Saks Fifth Avenue. We're just walking around Radio City and Rockefeller Center, and as I said, when I lived in Brooklyn, which was my whole life, we lived on Wyckoff and Hoyt. and Heath Ledger and his girlfriend lived 2 blocks away on Dean and Hoyt.
Is that Michelle Williams?
Michelle Williams and Heath Ledger. So I saw both of them, and he was on a skateboard holding a pizza when I saw him, and he skateboarded right by me. And then she was walking with, this was months later, she was walking with the baby, just walking along Smith Street, going into the shops. And she just smiled, and I smiled, and you keep going.
Right. You don't have time to get starstruck because they're everywhere.
Well, that's it. But I will tell you, the nicest person, one of the nicest people I met was Rhea Perlman.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to the 50th Street train station, and I said, oh, there's a crowd. It's got to be a celebrity. And it was Danny DeVito.
Mm-hmm.
So he was signing autographs. She and I started talking, and we talked for about 20 minutes, and she was so nice. And at the time, he was the big celebrity because he was on Taxi.
Mm-hmm.
And she hadn't gotten Cheers yet, but she was very nice.
All right, and tell me that story about Rhea Perlman, because this is going to be the crux of the article here.
Oh, well, like I said, I was going to try to get his autograph, and he was surrounded by people, and she and I just started chit-chatting, and we talked about movies and life, and it just really nice conversation. And she said, I love your name, Carla. And I'll never forget her saying that to me, that she liked my name. And like I said, she was just regular people like you and I are speaking.
And right.
And you and I just were speaking about different subjects. We talked about books, we talked about movies, we talked about life. And like I said, we spoke for about 20 minutes. And it was just a lovely conversation. And you know, when he was ready and the crowd had kind of dispersed. And she said, it was very nice meeting you. And I said, it was very nice meeting you. And we just said goodbye, and I went home. I got to the train and went home.
Yeah, but the interesting part of that is she asked you what your name was, and you said it's Carla, and she said, I love that name. And then the next thing you know, she's on TV, and her most famous character is Carla on Cheers.
Exactly. I always say she remembered my name.
Yep.
She said a few times how much she liked my name. So I always say she remembered me, and that's why the character was named Carla. To me, that is. It could have been that the writers wanted that name all along, and maybe she had nothing to do with it. But I was flattered, and I said, again, she was so nice when we met.
Well, I
had a lovely conversation.
I believe absolutely she chose Carla because of you. And that was a clue on my crossword puzzle the other day. Rhea Perlman's character on Cheers, and I typed in Carla, and I thought of my friends. So, so I don't.
And I always say that.
Yeah, I don't watch a Cheers rerun now that I don't think of you. So. Or
think about them again. She's just regular people like you and I.
Absolutely. And your mother worked. Was it John Huston that there was a connection to with your mom?
Well, she did domestic work, and she did dinner parties for people. And one of the people she did a dinner party was Mrs. Hyde. And she lived around 68th Street, and I'll never forget, she had a mansion that had an elevator in it.
Wow.
So that was, they live better than us rich people. Better than me anyway.
Right.
But John Huston was a guest. Was one of the guests. My mother met a lot. She met Frederick March, and she'd bring autographs home. So she met John Huston, and she met Frederick March, and just so many celebrities. I can't even call the names that she did dinner parties. And one of the people, I tell you, who was so lovely was Ian Pay. And he was an architect. He passed away. He and his wife was so nice. And my mother would do dinner parties, and we would go pick her up. And he lived on West End Avenue, and just a few doors from where Marilyn Monroe lived.
Wow.
And I would say, Marilyn Monroe used to live right there because she was one of my favorites.
Right.
And he was like, was so nice. And they would say, come in, Carla. We got chocolate cake. And I'd have a glass of champagne and chocolate cake and sit and talk. And of course, the place was beautiful. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Pay was the one who did the, in front of the Louvre.
Oh, wow.
So Mr. Pay did that. And actually, when my mother passed away, he was in Paris working on it. And he was so nice to call. And he sent flowers to my mother's funeral. And he was overseas, as I said.
Oh, isn't that fantastic? Can you say that name again just so I'll have it and get it?
I like ice. Mm-hmm. Like Mary. Hey. P-E-I, and he was a very famous architect. You could Google him, and you would see I-M-K, and you'd be like, okay.
Yep. Okay, great. And there's a story, was it, who spanked you? Was it Angelica, or was it John Huston?
My mother, when she was doing a dinner party, she was underfoot, and my mother did spank her. And I remember my mother telling the story that she spanked her, and John Huston got upset. My mother said, you'd be more upset if I burned her with the food.
Right.
Because he was trying to serve, get the food prepared and everything for this dinner party.
Right. So your mother spanked Angelica Huston.
Yes.
That was always an interesting story. Was there anybody in New York that you met that you got starstruck?
Oh, I did see. Well, I didn't meet him, but I saw my niece was a pastry chef at this restaurant called Boulay. And when I went to pick her up from work one day, I saw Raul Julia, and he was very tall. And I was like, wow. And he nodded and smiled, and I nodded and smiled. I will tell you, who's the most famous I've met? Sophia Loren. When she had written her book, she was at Barnes & Noble. And this was, of course, when dinosaurs, as I say, I dated Methuselah, John baptized me, and a baby said Jesus. She was so lovely, and she was coming out. I had gotten the book, and she was coming out of Barnes & Noble. She looked at me and grabbed me and said, ciao, Bella. And she kissed me on both cheeks. And everybody in the crowd was like, she touched you. She kissed, she greeted you. And she didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
And she was just very lovely.
Well, I think that goes back to, Carla, that you have a light, a radiance about you that just draws people in.
Well, I will say, and I said yesterday, I am a born-again Christian, as you and I have talked about.
Yes.
And I ask God to put someone in my path that I can be a blessing to. And I always say, when you say this to God, he's going to put someone in your path that you can be a blessing to when you rise up. And I had a lovely conversation just yesterday with a young man, and he was just killing time. And I said, sure, you could say that. So we have newspapers, magazines, and he read some newspapers, and we had a lovely conversation. And he said, wow, I'm really enjoying speaking with you. What is your name again? And I said, Carla. And he said, it's been so nice speaking with you. Thank you. And any good you see in me does come from the Lord.
Absolutely. Well, I can say from personal experience that you have that prayer of you blessing other people has been answered, because knowing you has been a great blessing, and being able to call you a friend is certainly a great blessing to me.
The same for me and your wife. And do you remember when we were doing trivia night, and one of the questions was where the most wine was produced? And you and I got that question right, and she put like an off-the-wall answer, and we all were laughing good-naturedly, and she was like, I know.
Yeah.
And we just kind of bonded over that moment.
Yeah.
Truthfully.
I didn't remember that. But that's nice. Yeah. That's really nice.
We kind of just took off from there.
Yep, for sure. I mean, the first time I met you, and you weren't an employee of the library at that time.
No, I was a patron.
Just a patron. And how long have you been at the front desk now?
Oh, I started January 11th of last year.
All right.
So I made a year already, over a year already, and I am so grateful for the opportunity. And this is when I say I have an attitude of gratitude.
Yep.
And I thank God every day for the blessing that He has bestowed upon me, because I'm around people and people will come in and I'll talk to them and give suggestions for movies and books. One of the patrons who comes in, I enjoy this series of books. It's Haley Powell Mysteries by Lee Hollis. Mm-hmm. And I read one and it was so good. So I turned the patron on and she said, "Thank you so much. Those books are so good." I said, "Don't you wish you had nutty friends like that?" She goes, "Yeah, kind of."
Yeah.
And we just, I like to make suggestions on books I've enjoyed.
Well, and this is
come back and thank me.
Yes, and this is, I'm sure, as you have seen, I will be 37 years old the 25th this month, and I've lived here.
Happy birthday!
Oh, thank you. And I have lived here all my life, and this is a very friendly, kind, and wonderful community where we look out for our own. So I'm sure that you have found that since being here.
Yes, well, I tell you, we grew up in the projects in Brooklyn, New York,
mm-hmm.
and this was the 50s, and people worked together
mm-hmm.
as a group, as a community, looking out for each other. And like, if you were there, your mother could correct me and then bring me home to my mother, who would back your mother up.
You bet.
So that was the bonds we had. And I had taken, my niece and nephew were in their 30s, and I had taken them, they were like 12 or 13, to a bowling alley birthday party. And
mm-hmm.
the waitress was walking by, she stopped and she said, "You're from Gowanus. You're one of the Rojas's. We were your next door neighbors." And they were Sicilian.
Wow.
And they taught my mother how to make pasta and how to make real Italian food, the sauce from scratch, the meatballs and all the dishes. And my mother told them the dishes that she made.
Wow.
And it was just a very diverse neighborhood.
Fantastic.
And people just really looked out and shared what they had.
Now, did you inherit any of your mother's cooking talents? Because if so, I'm coming to your house for dinner.
Some I did. I don't know how to make chocolate mousse. And believe me, my mother, we were fat kids because my mother liked different desserts.
Right.
And she made baked Alaska, and she would make chocolate mousse and chocolate souffle, Chinese Jubilee. We ate good.
Right.
We did eat good as kids. And of course, my mother was actually originally from Alabama, which I believe I shared with you.
Mm.
She made her way to New York, and doing domestic work, you're exposed to different dishes and the dishes that people with money eat versus poor people.
Right.
And so she was exposed to that and the desserts, and she mastered them.
Absolutely. And of course, in the South, the way you make friends is through people's stomach. You feed them. So that's how we get along down here too.
Sure, no, I know. Well, there's nothing, breaking bread.
Yes.
Is a communal thing, and
mm-hmm.
you sit and you laugh and you talk, and meals are a unifier for people.
Yep, and we give thanks to God from where our blessings flow.
I always thank God, and I'm going to say again, I have an attitude of gratitude. And I thank God for the things I have and the things I don't, because there's a reason He has not given them to me.
Yes, ma'am. And that definitely shows through you on a daily basis, at least every time that I've ever seen you. So that definitely permeates through you. Now, before we go, can you tell me the Madonna story? Because I remember that one.
Oh, yes, that was so funny because a friend of mine, she was the real Roxanne, and you can Google her and see her in videos on YouTube. And they had a few real Roxannes, but anyway, she was one of them. And she came to the house with my friend Terry, and they said they were going clubbing, but they stopped by. So, come on in. So this is our friend Madonna. So, yeah, hi, how you doing? And they sat down, they had a drink, and I said, you guys have fun, have a good evening. And I had no idea. Well, she wasn't famous then. And then it was later when I saw her at Live Aid, I said, oh, that's the girl who came with Terry and Dimple. And it was Madonna.
Mm-hmm. Now, Live Aid was in 1985, and my favorite performer of all time performed there too, Phil Collins. So
I like Phil Collins.
Yeah, he's my favorite of all time. Now, you mentioned Heath Ledger. He's one of my wife's very favorites.
Oh, okay, well, he lived 2 blocks, like I said, on Dean and Hoyt. As a matter of fact, when he passed away, everybody was out there, you know, Entertainment Tonight and the paparazzi, and it was just a nightmare.
Yeah.
Us in the area just trying to get home because of all the, you know, press out there.
Very tragic how he passed,
and
so young too, just 28 years old with a baby and all that.
Yeah.
Just very tragic.
Yeah, that was sad. And like I said, he smiled at me, I smiled at him, and he went in with his pizza, and I went home.
Well, that's enough to make my wife very envious of you. She loved Heath Ledger, so.
Well, Richard Gere is my favorite, and I have not had the opportunity to meet him.
Richard Gere, yeah, and you didn't, and you haven't met him.
No.
So, well, yeah.
He's eternal.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely have time. I hope that you've enjoyed this conversation half as much as I have.
I'm going to leave you with a very funny story.
All right, you do that.
My niece, Jessica, was watching, I think she's watching What's Love Got to Do with It, but she's watching something on TV with Lawrence Fishburne. So my father looks at the TV and says, oh, that's Miss Fishburne's son.
Tina Turner, another one of my favorites, by the way. My first concert was Tina Turner.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, 25 years ago.
So she says, Grandpa, what did you say? He said, that's Miss Fishburne's son. I know him since he was little. And she says, Grandpa, you know who he is? And my niece was in shock. And he was like, yeah, very matter of fact. And he knew the name. She just had no idea that he knew this actor as a little kid.
Right. That was your father?
My dad who raised me. Not my biological, but when I say my father, I'm talking about my dad who raised me.
Right. You're the one who did the job, I understand. Thank you so much again.
You're more than welcome. Thank you, Zach.
All right.
And give the missus and little Carla a hug for me.
I absolutely will. They all look forward to seeing you again, too.
Okay, I have some Hershey's miniatures at the office.
Oh, fantastic.
To little Carla, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. She'll be counting on it.
Okay.
All right. Well, we will talk to you too. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.